Hello, my fellow chatterers and book lovers, and anyone else who's popped in because you're curious about what this is or you have got a bit lost. Welcome, everyone. I'm Chatty. This is my channel, Chatty the Mad Chatter, and I'm going to be chatting away madly about my April stats. So if you enjoy a stat, this is the one for you. On this channel, I do not edit my videos. It is just one shot, one continuous take. So cheers, everyone. Clink, 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 clink. So talking through the books that I read in April, I'm going to just have a little chat about my what was on my TBR. If you want to know what came out from my TBR game, I will leave a little link to the video here, and you can see what happened. So the first prompt I got, so just checking my notes, was the Lucky Ladder prompt, and that was to read a new series or continue with one. And I chose to start a new series, and that was the Pages & Co series by Anna James, with the first book, Tilly and the Bookwanderers. And I did read this one. I buddy read this with Kelli from Kelli Reads a Lot, and from Tallia from Bandana Book Mum. I nearly called her Tilly then. And so we had a really nice chat on the Discord, and Stacy also then joined us later and also had a chat as well, and we're hoping to read the second one in June, and hopefully Vadania is going to join us for that one too. So there we go, first one I did read. The next prompt was a 30 seconds prompt, and that was to read from an author I want more of. And I chose Uncomfortable Labels by Laura Kate Dale. I really enjoyed Gender Euphoria that she edited and wrote a few pieces for. And this is her autobiography, Uncomfortable Labels, My Life as a Gay Autistic Trans Woman. And I read this one. I then had A Worrying Worm. So I had to choose a book that was 535 pages. Or as close to. And the book that I had that was close to, with the one that was most likely 500 pages, was He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan, which is the second book in the Radiant Empire duology. And I read that one. My final prompt was a theme card, and for that theme card I had Fire and Flames on the cover, and I chose A Tempest of Tea. I have the Fairy Loot edition, which has got lots of reds and oranges sort of swirling around, whether it's the steam of the tea or whether just something a little bit more ominous like blood. I didn't read this one because I am buddy reading this with Cloe from Phantom of the Pages and Vadania Silverscribe, and we were taking so long to finish another book, which was my fault. So we never got round to reading A Tempest of Tea. So we have pushed that one back to May. So I'm reading it in May instead. The other books that I did also read this month are Sisters of the Lost March by Lucy Strange, Wilder Than Midnight by Kerry Burnell, Onyeka and the Secret Superhero by Tola Okoguru, The Toll by Neil Schusterman, I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shraya, and Feet of Clay by Terry Pratchett. I do also have a book that has been redacted because it is one of the St. Martin's Press books, which we are not talking about on this channel. If you are not sure what this is, I will leave a link to the video here by Sam at expertbooksnuggler, who goes into a lot of details about what the St. Martin's Press boycott is. In a nutshell, racism, we want them to be more accountable for it, and so therefore are not going to be talking about any of the books published by St. Martin's Press. But I'm using it in my own personal stats, so I have this blank placeholder so I can count its number, but I'm not going to be giving you any more details about it. Okay, I'm going to move on to the stats now. So I'm going to look at the age range. So here, out of the 10 books I read, 4 of them were middle grades. That's Tilly and the Bookwanderers, Sisters of the Lost Marsh, Wilder Than Midnight, and Onyeka and the Secret Superhero. I have one book that is a YA, that is The Toll, and I have 4 books that are adult books. So that's Uncomfortable Ladles, Uncomfortable Labels, He Who Drowned the World, I'm Afraid of Men, and Feet of Clay. So I look at my books in terms of like animal sizes because that kind of works for me. I have a little kind of pictorial thing. So an ant is anything that is below 150 pages. And I read 3 ant-sized books this month. So that is On Yaker and the Secret Superhero, I'm Afraid of Men, and Uncomfortable Labels. I read 2 mouse-sized books, which were Wilder Than Midnight and Sisters of the Lost Marsh. This amuses me a tad because if we look at Pages & Co. and Sisters of the Lost Marsh, so although yes, there are more pages in Sisters in the Lost Marsh, just looking at like the typesetting of the book, you've got, I'm trying to find one that doesn't have, there we go. Look at the typesetting of the book. You have got a border around it and a sort of like a normal spacing between the lines. Looking at the typesetting of Pages & Co. I mean, again, we've got illustrations. Let's find one that doesn't have a huge amount of illustrations on it. I love the illustrations, not gonna lie. There we go. So then looking at the typesetting of Tallia and the Bookwanderers, we've got much, much bigger margins around the book and ever so slightly bigger typesetting. It's quite difficult to see from the camera, but the it does seem to be like slightly bigger between the typesetting than the other ones. So that just entertained me. So like even though I'm going off on a massive ramble about this, even though like technically Tallia and the Bookwanderers has more pages than the other ones, I'm just aware it has a lot more like typesetting. So I feel it probably could be a mouse, but I need to not overthink things because I do tend to do that quite a bit. So for all extents and purposes, because Tallia and the Bookwanderers is over 300 pages, so a mouse is 151 to 300 pages. Tallia and the Bookwanderers is over 300 pages, but below 400, which makes it a goat. The other 2 goats I have are Feet of Clay, and the book I'm not talking about. So Feet of Clay are surprisingly long for a Pratchett. They usually tend to be mouse sizes, like just coming in at just under 300 pages. So yeah, these are the 2 goat-sized books. And then I have 1 cow. So a cow is 401 to 500 pages, which is He Who Drowned the World. And then that leaves my elephant, which is The Toll by Neil Shusterman, and that comes elephant is anything from 501 to 700 pages. So I've got a nice range of sizes here. Okay, the next stat I'm going to be looking at is where I got my books from. So 2 of these books I actually borrowed from my mum. So that is Wilder Than Midnight and Feet of Clay. I will be giving them back to her when I next see her. So these are my 2 borrowed books. I then have 3 from the library, which are these 3. So that's He Who Drowned the World, Uncomfortable Labels, and I'm Afraid of Men. And then the rest, that's moving Feet of Clay out the way, and Wilder Than Midnight, so I'm now just confusing myself. I really should be pausing in between all these bits, but we've gone with it now. It's actually not as many as I thought. That's it, 4. Sorry, no, 5. 5 books that I own. So half and half are mine. In terms of series, I have started 2 series. So I have started Pages & Co. There are 6 books in that series. And I have started Wilder Than Midnight, and there is 1 other book in that series at the moment. I've progressed with 1 series with the Little World Book Day book on Yaker and the Secret Superhero. So I've just got 1 more book to read in that series. And then I finished 3, which is quite thrilling. So I finished Ark of the Scythe with The Toll. I finished the redacted one, And I finished the Radiant Empire duology with He Who Drowned the World. Genres are becoming less straightforward for me because I've got a few crossovers, but generally I have got 4 fantasy books, Feet of Clay, Wilder than Midnight, Onyeka, and Pages & Co. I have got 1 dystopia, which is The Toll. I've got 2 non-fiction, which is Uncomfortable Labels and I'm Afraid of Men. And then I've got 2 books that I sort of, when I was doing this, put as magical realism, but I don't know if I now feel that's the strongest genre for them. So Sisters of the Lost Marsh could be sort of go in the fantasy zone a little bit more, but I'd say it's more magical realism because it's not a huge part, but there's a vibe of the story, but it's not hugely fantastical. It could also go slightly into the more of the spooky, and it's also historical fiction. So I've put it under magical realism just because of kind of the spooky folktale vibes from it, but it could also equally be as strong in historical fiction. And the same goes for my other book that I have, which is He Who Drowned the World. So He Who Drowned the World is often classed as a fantasy, but again, it's very low. It's very low fantasy. It barely kind of comes into the story that much. It's much more of like a historical epic. So in the balance, I put it in magical realism. But again, I think this probably kind of fits historical more than anything else. And also Pages & Co. Being a portal fantasy, it very much kind of, although we've got the fantastical element of book characters coming out and the possibility to go into books, we also do spend a lot of time in the world as we know it. So it does also have contemporary vibes as well in this, but I have popped it into the fantasy category. So there we go, that's genres. I'm now going to look into whether I'm reading Global Majority. My goal is that I read half. I have not done that this month. I've only got 3 out of the 10 books that are Global Majority, and that is She Who Became the Sun, I'm Afraid of Men, and Onyeka and the Secret Superhero. So that is 3 out of 10, less than a third. Slightly under a third. So I'm kind of averaging that at the moment. I'm really not pushing that close to half, which I really do want to be doing. So I need to kind of be reflecting a little bit more as to why that is. I don't know if it's to do with my book collection. I don't know if it's to do with the areas that I'm reading in terms of like intersectionality, like trying to read more books with disabilities, trying to read more trans books, and there not being as much of those from the Global Majority stories. I don't know. But anyway, it's something that I'm interested in exploring a bit more, and we will see what comes of it. And I realise once again I didn't talk about my middle grade goals, but reading 4 books out of 10. With middle grade I want to be reading having a third of what I read being middle grade, so I did hit that goal this month. In terms of diversity, I read 3 books which are LGBTQ+. So that is I'm Afraid of Men, Uncomfortable Labels, and He Who Became the Sun. What was I going to say something else and I can't remember what it is. It's gone completely out my brain. Oh yeah, no, that was it. So there is a character in The Toll who would fit into the a couple of characters that fit into the LGBTQ+ category, but I think there's not a strong, maybe there was in this one. In the second one, there wasn't a strong enough presence. In this one, there was probably a bit more of a stronger presence. We didn't quite fully, we had the problem is with The Toll, you have quite a few different viewpoints. I'm going to think about that one. I'm going to think about that because I think we did have more. So the way I kind of say whether or not it counts is if it's a protagonist that is part of the LGBTQ+ community. And actually, 2 of these people did become protagonists. So yeah, that actually would, yeah, I'm going to actually say the toll counts in having queer representation. So yeah, 4 with queer representation this time. The toll does count because that was a protagonist. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but yes, there we go. Okay, moving on. In terms of disability representation, there were 2 books I read that had that. So in Wilder Than Midnight and in He Who Drowned the World, there was protagonists with disabilities. In terms of neurodivergent representation, I have 1 book, which is Uncomfortable Labels, that has neurodivergent representation because Laura Kate Dale is autistic. In terms of mental health, just going to look at what I've read. Yeah, in terms of mental health representation, there are definitely 3 books that I read this month that looked at those. I'm Afraid of Men and Uncomfortable Labels definitely looked at anxiety, and there were some kind of aspects of eating disorder and things as well in Uncomfortable Labels. It didn't kind of go too fully into it, but it was mentioned enough that I think it definitely kind of counts, especially mixed with all the anxiety. In He Who Drowned the World, there is definitely a look at kind of a lot of trauma and grief in here, and kind of how that affects people. Then there are 2 books where I think there is a certain aspect of mental health, just in terms of there are some aspects of emotional abuse and abandonment, but these are 2 middle grade books, and they are done it's sort of done like, it doesn't shy away from the topic, it just touches on it but doesn't like delve too, it doesn't really kind of like pull it apart, but you can definitely see characters being affected by the way they have been treated in terms of their emotions. So that's why I'm mentioning these 2 as well. Okay, so I feel like I have more of a range of diversity in what I was reading this month, which was good. And I think that was everything that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so usually I talk about the format of books that I read, although I have got 2 very, very, very tiny books, because I suppose one technically is a novella, the other one feels more like a sort of like a memoir / essay, but I think they're all very much like physical books. Like I had no audiobooks this month, there were no graphic novels, like it was very much like I was physically reading this month and reading books in novel format. So yeah, that is everything that I want to talk about in terms of stats. Now usually this is the part of the video where I then go on to talk about my favourite and least favourite books. I'm struggling this month. I'm struggling so bad. So I do not talk about rereads in terms of this because I think you have much more of a connection to a reread, or you might not remember it as well as you did previously. So I never kind of include the rereads, sorry. I never include the rereads in this. So all the middle grades I really enjoyed. On Yeka, I don't feel like I can kind of judge. Yes, it was a lot smaller than the others, but it gave me the vibes of the other books. But if I read it by itself, because I haven't had like kind of like character growth, it wouldn't give me the same thing. But because it's part of a series that I have had the character growth, I'm already kind of like progressed on with my emotions towards those characters anyway. And I thought the story was really interesting. I don't feel it's finished, and I feel we're going to be picking up threads in book 3. So I don't feel that I can, it's so very much kind of part of a series that I don't think that small aspect of it by itself I can kind of measure against anything else. So all 3 middle grades I really loved. I think there were, 4. I think they're really, really strong. Like I've already said, I love the Onyeka series. Pages and Co gave me something really, really different, and as a book lover I absolutely loved it. I thought it was crafted well. I thought the characters were great. The same with Sisters of the Lost Marsh and Wilder Than Midnight. The writing styles of both were wonderful. They're very different, but they're so well done. And again, you've got plot, you've got characters. I can't really separate them. So I can't pull any one of those to be like a least favourite or a favourite, because they feel very much kind of on a par to me. And then you kind of move into sort of like the more the longer books where you've got a lot more of a kind of plot and character arc going on, and there's a lot of stakes. And then you've also got the 2 non-fictions books as well, which were also very, very powerful. And I can't pull apart. I had such an emotional connection with these 2 non-fiction. They are ones I definitely want to. I felt they were such important books to read that I can't pull back one from the other. But at the same time, He Who Drowned the World and The Toll, the themes that were explored in those books were brilliant. And the how death was looked at in The Toll, different decisions that you would make, and the journey the characters go on, and kind of how it rounded out the whole series, I thought was fantastic. And He Who Drowned the World, I am loving this duology so much. I feel I definitely want to own it. I definitely want to reread it, and I feel when I do, I'm going to get even more out of it. This kind of picked up with She Who Became the Sun and really developed all the themes and the groundwork it had put in before. It was so beautifully told. Again, immersive world, atmosphere, character arcs, and exploration of themes. I cannot say that a book was least favourite or favourite out of these. I just can't manage it this month, and I have never done that before. I have, since I've been doing these, I've always managed to pull a favourite. Like maybe I'll have had 2, or maybe I'll have even once had 3, but I've always been able to kind of separate them, and I can't this month. I just had such a brilliant reading month, and all the books gave me different things. I really can't. These are all really strong books, and I think I probably will be talking about them in my mid-year freakout tag, if not in the Chatty Awards at the end of the year. So, sorry, I haven't got a least favourite or a favourite for you to at all. There isn't one this month. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say about these books, really. I really enjoyed all of them. If you've read these books and if you have any particular thoughts and feelings that you would like to share with me, I would love to hear from you. Please, if you are someone that also like pulls apart your stats kind of at the end of the month, I'd love to hear like how much you read, if you had a least favourite and a favourite. Are you hitting reading goals? Are you someone that likes reading goals? Are you doing those? Please let me know. You know I love a chat. Happy reading, everyone.